March 1945. The German heartland lay before Allied forces like a fortress protected by nature itself. Between victory and the Nazi homeland flowed a river that had guarded Germany for 2,000 years. What happened in those fateful days would change warfare forever. Mist rises from the dark waters. Captain Jack Morrison, 28 years old, a rugged engineer with intelligent eyes, studies the far shore through binoculars. The sound of distant artillery echoes across the water. "My name is Jack Morrison," he thinks to himself. 3 years ago, I was designing bridges in Ohio. Now, I'm about to attempt something every military manual says is impossible. Sergeant Tommy Walsh, 24, approaches with a steaming cup of coffee. "Coffee's terrible, sir." "But it's hot," Tommy says. "Thanks, Walsh. Any word from headquarters?" Jack replies, "Colonel wants to see you at 800. Something about those new vehicles?" Jack lowers his binoculars, intrigued. "The amphibious trucks?" "That's them. Word is we're getting 200 of the things." 200? For what? Tommy grins. "To do the impossible, sir." Inside the command tent that morning, Colonel Frank Bradley, 45 years old, a seasoned commander with maps spread before him, looks up as Jack enters. "Morrison! Just the man I wanted to see. How's your German?" "Rusty, sir. Why?" "Because you're going to be having conversations with them very soon." Close conversations. The colonel points to aerial photographs of the enemy shore. German intelligence thinks we'll need weeks to cross this river. Pontoon bridges, massive preparations, the whole traditional playbook. "And we're not doing that? We're going to drive across." Jack stares at him. "Sir? Those amphibious trucks, Morrison, 250 of them. They can carry 25 men each, or 2.5 tons of equipment. More importantly, they can drive straight from land into water, cross the river, and drive up the other side without stopping." Jack processes this information, his engineering mind racing through the technical challenges. Current velocity, load distribution, waterproofing integrity, engine performance in mixed terrain. "The Germans won't expect it," he says slowly. "They're positioned to defend against traditional crossing methods. Fixed pontoon bridges, predictable assault boat routes, concentrated landing zones." "Exactly. While they're watching for our pontoon bridges and assault boats, we'll be driving battalions across like it's a Sunday afternoon." "What's my role in this?" Colonel Bradley stands, moving to a detailed model of the crossing site. The miniature landscape shows every hill, every gun position, every potential obstacle. You're going to coordinate the technical aspects. Make sure those trucks don't sink, don't get lost in the current, and deliver our boys exactly where they need to be. But it's more than that, Morrison. You're going to revolutionize how we think about river crossings. Jack studies the model more closely. "Sir, the current here runs at about 8 knots during normal flow. With spring runoff, it could be 12 knots or more. These trucks are rated for 6 knots maximum water speed. Can they handle stronger current? If we adjust the approach angle, launch upstream to compensate for drift, and modify the propeller pitch." "Yes, I think so. But it'll require precise calculations for each crossing point." "That's why you're here, Captain. Your background in hydraulic engineering makes you uniquely qualified. When do we start?" 3 days. But first, you need to meet someone." Just then, the tent flap opens and a woman enters. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, 26 years old. A combat nurse with determined eyes and graceful movements despite her military bearing. There's something immediately striking about her. Not just her beauty, but an inner strength that comes from seeing too much suffering and refusing to let it break her. "Lieutenant Chen, meet Captain Morrison." "Sarah, Jack here is going to make sure your mobile hospital gets across the river in one piece." Sarah extends her hand with confidence, her grip firm and warm. When Jack shakes it, There's an electric moment that neither acknowledges but both feel, a recognition that goes deeper than mere attraction. "Captain," she says, her voice steady but with a hint of warmth that makes Jack's pulse quicken. "I've heard about your engineering background. Ohio State? Hydraulic systems specialization?" Jack blinks, surprised. "You've done your homework." "I always research the people I'm trusting with my life, and the lives of my patients." Colonel Bradley watches this exchange with obvious amusement. Sarah's field hospital will be transported in modified amphibious trucks. You two need to work together to ensure the medical equipment survives the crossing intact. "When can we start planning?" Jack asks, unable to take his eyes off Sarah. "Now," she says. "Lives depend on getting this right. I've lost too many good men to preventable deaths because medical supplies were delayed or damaged." There's pain in her voice, and Jack recognizes the weight she carries, the responsibility of holding lives in her hands. "I understand," he says quietly. "I've seen what happens when engineering fails in combat. It's not just equipment that breaks." Their eyes meet again, and both recognize a shared burden, the terrible responsibility of decisions that mean life or death for others. As they walk toward the vehicle depot, Jack finds himself stealing glances at Sarah. She moves with purpose, but there's something vulnerable beneath her professional exterior that draws him in. "You seem nervous," she observes, catching him looking. "Do I? Maybe it's because we're about to attempt something that's never been done before. Or maybe it's because you're walking with a woman," she teases gently, then grows more serious. "When was the last time you had a conversation that wasn't about engineering or military operations?" Jack considers this. "Honestly, I can't remember. This war has a way of consuming everything else. I know the feeling. Sometimes I forget there's a world beyond field hospitals and casualty reports." They walk in comfortable silence for a moment, both recognizing something in the other that has been missing from their lives. "Tell me something about yourself that has nothing to do with the war," Sarah says suddenly. "That's harder than you might think. What about you first?" "I used to paint watercolors. Landscapes mostly. There was something peaceful about capturing the way light fell across a meadow or reflected off water." "Used to? Hard to see beauty in landscapes when you've seen too many of them torn apart by artillery. What about you?" "I built model bridges as a kid. Spent hours getting the engineering just right, testing them with toy trains. My mother used to joke that I'd build a bridge to the moon if given enough time and materials." "Maybe you will, after the war. Maybe we both will. Paint bridges while I build them." Sarah smiles, and for a moment, the war seems very far away. "I'd like that." They reach the depot where dozens of strange-looking vehicles sit covered by tarps. The scale of the operation becomes immediately apparent. These aren't just a few experimental vehicles, but a massive fleet representing a revolutionary approach to warfare. Jack pulls back one cover, revealing an amphibious truck that looks like someone crossed a boat with a military truck. The vehicle is larger than Sarah expected, more robust and capable-looking. "These are our magic carpets," Jack explains, running his hand along the hull with obvious admiration. 26 feet long, 8 feet wide. In water, that propeller pushes us forward at about 6 knots. On land, it drives like any other truck, just heavier." Sarah examines the vehicle more closely, her medical mind already working. "Where would wounded soldiers be positioned during transport?" "Good question. We've modified several for medical use. Let me show you." Jack leads her to another truck, this one clearly configured as a mobile treatment center. The interior has been fitted with stretcher mounts, medical supply compartments, and even a small surgical area. "This is ingenious," Sarah says, genuinely impressed. "We can begin treatment during the crossing instead of waiting until we reach the other side." Exactly. And if needed, these vehicles can evacuate wounded back across the river without waiting for boats or bridges. Will it really work? Jack's expression grows serious as he considers the technical challenges. The engineering is sound. We've tested them extensively. But combat conditions, he pauses. Let me be honest. We're asking these machines to do something unprecedented. Carry full combat loads across a major river under enemy fire, then immediately transition to land operations. How many casualties are we expecting? Jack looks across the water toward the enemy shore. With traditional methods, maybe 50,000. The Germans have had months to prepare defensive positions, register their artillery on every obvious crossing point, position their reserves for counterattack. And with these trucks, maybe 5,000, maybe less. The dispersed crossing points make it nearly impossible for them to concentrate their fire effectively. Sarah does the math in her head. That's 45,000 sons, husbands, and fathers who go home instead of dying, she says quietly. That's the hope. That's what keeps me working 18-hour days checking every seal, every engine, every component that could fail. They stand in comfortable silence for a moment, both understanding the weight of responsibility on their shoulders. I should check the medical supplies, Sarah says finally. And I should run tests on the waterproofing. But Sarah? Yes? Would you have dinner with me tonight? Nothing fancy, just rations by the river. I'd like to know more about the woman I'm trusting with soldiers' lives. Sarah hesitates, then nods. 7 o'clock. And Jack? I'd like to know more about the man I'm trusting with mine. The rest of the day passes quickly, as both throw themselves into preparation. Jack spends hours with his technical teams, checking engine modifications, testing radio equipment, and calculating load distributions. Every detail matters when lives hang in the balance. Meanwhile, Sarah organizes her medical teams, ensuring that surgical supplies are properly waterproofed, that stretchers are securely mounted, and that every medic understands the unique challenges of providing care in amphibious vehicles. At one point, their paths cross as Jack tests the bilge pumps on Sarah's medical truck. How's it looking? She asks. These pumps can handle significant water intake. Even if the hull is perforated by small arms fire, you should be able to continue operating. Should be? Jack meets her eyes. Sarah, I won't lie to you. We're venturing into uncharted territory. I've done every calculation, run every test. But combat has a way of revealing weaknesses no one anticipated. I appreciate the honesty, but I will promise you this. If something goes wrong, I'll get you out. Whatever it takes. There's something in his voice that makes Sarah believe him completely. That evening, they sit on wooden crates by the water's edge, sharing army rations that somehow taste better in each other's company. The setting sun paints the river in shades of gold and crimson, beautiful despite the deadly purpose it will serve tomorrow. Tell me about home, Sarah says, opening a can of beans that actually smells edible for once. Small town in Ohio called Riverside. Population about 3,000. I was building bridges across creeks when this war started. Never imagined I'd be trying to move armies across rivers in Germany. Sounds peaceful. It was. My father ran the local hardware store. My mother taught elementary school. I had a small engineering firm with 2 employees and dreams of building something significant someday. Like what? A suspension bridge, maybe. Something that would last for generations. What about you? Sarah takes a sip of surprisingly good coffee before answering. San Francisco. My parents immigrated from China before I was born. They ran a small restaurant in Chinatown. I was studying to be a doctor when Pearl Harbor happened. Figured the Army needed nurses more than medical school needed another student. You'll finish your studies? If I survive this war, yes. I want to help people heal, not just patch them up for more fighting. Maybe specialize in trauma surgery. God knows I'm getting enough practice. A comfortable silence falls between them as they watch the moon begin to reflect on the water. In the distance, they can hear the rumble of tanks and trucks as the final preparations continue. Jack? Yes? Are you afraid? He considers lying, projecting the confidence expected of an officer, then decides on honesty. Terrified, not of dying, but of failing. If this doesn't work, if those trucks sink or get lost in the current, thousands of good men die because I made a mistake in my calculations. And if it works? If it works, we save those lives and maybe end this war a little sooner. Maybe start thinking about what comes after. Sarah moves closer, their shoulders almost touching. What do you think comes after? I don't know. Before I met you, I just thought about going back to Ohio, building my bridges over peaceful creeks. Now, I think about building a life with someone who understands what it means to hold other people's lives in your hands. Sarah turns to look at him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. Jack, we've known each other for exactly 1 day. I know. It's crazy. There's a war on. Tomorrow might be our last day alive. It is crazy, she agrees quietly. But I think I'm falling in love with you too. This time, nothing stops them. Jack cups her face gently and kisses her. It's soft, tentative at first, then deeper as she responds. For a moment, there's no war, no river to cross, no soldiers depending on them. There's only this connection between two people who have found something precious in the midst of terrible circumstances. When they part, both are breathing hard. After tomorrow, Jack whispers. After tomorrow, Sarah agrees. But Jack, come back to me. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. They sit together until late, talking about everything and nothing. Their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. It's the kind of conversation that creates intimacy beyond physical attraction, the sharing of souls that makes love possible. Finally, duty calls them back to their responsibilities. They part reluctantly, each knowing they might never see the other again, but also knowing that something fundamental has changed in both their lives. Jack returns to his tent, but doesn't sleep. Instead, he goes over the technical specifications one more time, checking and double-checking every detail. The mathematics of flow dynamics, hull displacement, engine performance curves, all the cold calculations that will determine whether their desperate gamble succeeds. At Oro 200, he gives up on sleep entirely and walks to the vehicle depot. The amphibious trucks sit in neat rows, dark shapes against the pre-dawn sky. Jack checks each one personally, testing engines, inspecting seals, verifying equipment loads. The vehicles represent more than just machines. They embody a completely different philosophy of warfare. Where the Germans had focused on perfecting a few specialized vehicles, the Americans had mass-produced thousands of good-enough machines. Quantity over quality, standardization over specialization, pragmatism over perfection. Couldn't sleep either? Jack turns to find Tommy Walsh approaching with 2 cups of coffee and a concerned expression. Too much to think about. The trucks? Everything. The trucks, the mission, the men we're responsible for. Tommy, what if I've made a mistake? What if there's something I haven't considered? Tommy hands him the coffee and sits on a nearby crate. Sir, I've been with you for 2 years. I've seen you solve problems that stumped officers with twice your experience. You don't make mistakes with engineering. There's always a first time. Not tomorrow. Not with this. You know why? Why? Because you care too much to fail. I can see it in your eyes, just like Lieutenant Chen can. Jack looks at his sergeant sharply. What about her? Sir, with respect, the whole camp knows you're sweet on Lieutenant Chen, and she's sweet on you. Is it that obvious? Only to everyone with eyes, Tommy grins. But sir, she's good for you. First time I've seen you smile since we got to this river. First time you've looked like anything other than a man carrying the weight of the world. Assuming we survive today. We will. Those trucks are solid, the plan is sound, and we've got the best men in the Army. Plus, Tommy's grin widens, you've got something to fight for besides duty now. What do you mean? Love, sir. It changes a man's perspective on living versus dying. Jack considers this as he sips his coffee. Tommy is right. Meeting Sarah has given him a reason to survive beyond mere professional obligation. Tommy, yes, sir? If something happens to me tomorrow, nothing's going to happen. But if it does, make sure Lieutenant Chen gets this. Jack pulls a sealed envelope from his jacket. It's a letter explaining how much meeting her has meant to me. Sir, you can give it to her yourself after we win. I hope so. But just in case, Tommy pockets the letter. Consider it insurance, sir, but you're coming back. As dawn approaches, Jack makes one final inspection of the lead vehicle he'll ride in during the crossing. Every system checks out perfectly, but he knows that combat has a way of revealing weaknesses no peacetime test can anticipate. At Oro 800, final preparations begin in earnest. Soldiers line up for equipment checks, their faces showing a mixture of excitement and terror. Engines roar to life for final tests, filling the morning air with mechanical thunder. Medical teams organize their supplies with the methodical precision that comes from knowing lives depend on preparation. Jack finds Sarah loading her mobile hospital truck, her movements efficient, but betraying underlying tension. Ready? As I'll ever be. You? Same. They work side by side for the next few hours, not talking much, but drawing comfort from each other's presence. There's an intimacy and shared preparation in working toward a common goal that transcends mere attraction. Around noon, Jack is called to a meeting with his section leaders, the men who will command individual vehicle groups during the crossing. Gentlemen, he begins, spreading maps across a makeshift table. In 10 hours, we begin an operation that will either revolutionize amphibious warfare or go down as one of history's most spectacular failures. Lieutenant Parker, a young officer from Tennessee, raises his hand. What's our biggest concern, sir? Honestly, the unknown. We've tested these vehicles extensively, but never under combat conditions with full loads. We're asking them to perform at the absolute limits of their capability. What if we encounter stronger resistance than expected? Asks Lieutenant Rodriguez, a veteran of the Italian campaign. We adapt. These trucks can take some damage and keep moving. Small arms fire won't stop them, and they're too dispersed for effective artillery targeting. But if German resistance is heavier than anticipated, individual vehicle commanders have discretion to abort their crossings and try alternative routes. And if the current is stronger than anticipated? Jack points to his calculations on a nearby blackboard. I've computed drift angles for current speeds up to 12 knots. Each driver has a waterproof card with the correct approach headings. But remember, these vehicles can exit the water at any point where the bank allows. If you miss your intended landing zone, find another. As evening approaches, the tension becomes almost tangible. Soldiers write final letters home, clean weapons that are already spotless, and gather in small groups for quiet conversation about everything except what they're about to attempt. Jack seeks out Sarah one final time before the operation begins. He finds her in the medical tent, briefing her teams on emergency procedures. How are your teams? Ready. We've divided the medical supplies across multiple trucks, so if we lose one, we don't lose everything critical. Smart thinking. Learned it the hard way in Italy. Never put all your eggs in one basket when people's lives depend on those eggs. They step outside the tent, away from the bustle of final preparations. The sun is setting over the river that has become their shared destiny, painting everything in golden light that seems almost peaceful. Sarah? Yes? No matter what happens tonight, these past few days with you have meant everything to me. To me too. If things go wrong, they won't. But if they do, I want you to know that you made me remember what we're fighting for. Not just freedom or democracy, but the chance for people to love each other without fear. Sarah's eyes fill with tears she refuses to let fall. You're going to make me cry, and I refuse to cry before a battle. Then I'll stop talking and kiss you instead. And he does, deeply and passionately, pouring everything he feels into that kiss. Around them, soldiers and nurses continue their preparations. But for Jack and Sarah, nothing exists except this moment and this connection. When they part, both know it might be their last kiss, but both also know that what they've found together is worth fighting for. "See you on the other side," Jack whispers. "Count on it." In the command tent, Colonel Bradley spreads fresh reconnaissance photos on the table. Our spotters have identified the German artillery positions. They're exactly where we expected, covering the traditional crossing points. And our amphibious route, lightly defended. They're not expecting anyone to try crossing there. Jack studies the photos. What about after we're across? How do we keep them from concentrating their reserves against us? Simultaneous crossings at 12 different points along a 20-mile front. They won't know where to focus their counterattack. 12 points? How many trucks is that? All of them. 250 amphibious trucks, plus another 150 regular landing craft for the follow-up waves. Jack whistles low. That's not a river crossing. That's an invasion. Exactly. And Morrison, you're commanding the northern sector. 6 crossing points, 80 trucks, 2,000 men. The weight of command settles on Jack's shoulders. "I won't let you down, sir." "I know you won't." Briefing at 0600. Get some sleep. But sleep doesn't come easily. Jack lies awake thinking about the mission, about the men depending on him, and about Sarah. In 36 hours, they'll either be celebrating on the far shore or mourning the dead. The next morning brings frantic preparation. Jack oversees final modifications to the amphibious trucks, while Sarah organizes her medical teams. They catch glimpses of each other throughout the day, sharing looks that communicate more than words. "Captain Morrison," Sergeant Walsh calls out. "We've got a problem with truck number 47. The bilge pump isn't working properly." Jack hurries over to inspect the vehicle. The pump motor has come loose from its mounting. "Can we fix it?" "Not properly. We'd need machine shop equipment." Then we improvise. "Get me some wire and sheet metal." For the next 2 hours, Jack and his team jury-rig a solution. It's not elegant, but it should work. "Will that hold?" Tommy asks. "Long enough to get across." "It has to." Sarah appears with a cup of real coffee, somehow acquired through mysterious nurse channels. "Thought you could use this." "Where did you find coffee?" "Medical secrets," she says with a smile. "How are the preparations going?" "As well as can be expected. We're asking these machines to do something they've never done before on this scale. And asking the same of ourselves." Jack takes a sip of the precious coffee. "Sarah, if something happens tomorrow—" "Nothing's going to happen. But if it does, I want you to know that meeting you has been the best thing to come out of this whole terrible war." Sarah's eyes glisten. "Jack Morrison, are you going sentimental on me?" "Maybe I am." "Good. Because I was thinking the same thing." They stand close enough to kiss, but both know this isn't the time or place. "After tomorrow," Jack says. "After tomorrow," Sarah agrees. The final briefing takes place at sunset. Officers crowd into the largest tent, studying maps and timing charts. "Gentlemen," Colonel Bradley begins, "and lady," he nods to Sarah. "In 12 hours, we attempt something unprecedented. We're going to move 3 divisions across a major river in a single night using amphibious vehicles." He points to the detailed timeline. H hour is 2200. Naval bombardment begins at 2000 to soften up the far shore. At 2200, the first wave of amphibious trucks enters the water. Each vehicle will carry 25 fully equipped soldiers. "What's our crossing time?" asks Major Stevens. "Approximately 12 minutes per trip, including loading and unloading." We estimate 90% of the first wave will be across within 30 minutes. And if the Germans concentrate artillery on the crossing points? Colonel Bradley's expression grows grim. That's why we're hitting 12 points simultaneously. They can't cover them all effectively. What about casualties? We're prepared for up to 20% losses in the first wave. That's still better odds than any traditional river assault. Jack raises his hand. What if the trucks break down in mid-river? Each crossing point has rescue boats standing by. But Morrison, that's why we're counting on your technical expertise. Those trucks have to work. They'll work, Jack says with more confidence than he feels. Any other questions? The tent falls silent. Then, gentlemen, get some rest. Tomorrow, we make history. As officers file out, Sarah touches Jack's arm. Walk with me? They stroll through the camp, past soldiers checking equipment and writing letters home. They're so young, Sarah observes. We all are. Promise me something, Jack. What? Promise me you'll be careful tomorrow. Don't try to be a hero. I'm an engineer, Sarah. Heroes are for the infantry. Engineers can die just as easily as anyone else. They stop walking, facing each other in the moonlight. Sarah, I need to tell you something. What? I think I'm falling in love with you. She takes a sharp breath. Jack, I know it's crazy. We've known each other for 2 days. There's a war on. Tomorrow might be our last day alive. It is crazy, she agrees quietly. But I think I'm falling in love with you too. This time, nothing stops them. Jack cups her face gently and kisses her. It's soft, tentative at first, then deeper as she responds. For a moment, there's no war, no river to cross, no soldiers depending on them when they part. Both are breathing hard. After tomorrow, Jack whispers. After tomorrow, Sarah agrees. But Jack, come back to me. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. They part reluctantly, each knowing they might never see the other again. Jack returns to his tent, but doesn't sleep. Instead, he goes over the technical specifications one more time, checking and double-checking every detail. At 0400, he gives up on sleep and walks to the vehicle depot. The amphibious trucks sit in neat rows, dark shapes against the pre-dawn sky. Jack checks each one personally, testing engines, inspecting seals, verifying equipment loads. Couldn't sleep either? Jack turns to find Tommy Walsh approaching with 2 cups of coffee. Too much to think about. The trucks? Everything. The trucks, the mission, the men we're responsible for. And the nurse? Jack looks at his sergeant sharply. What about her? Sir, with respect, the whole camp knows you're sweet on Lieutenant Chen, and she's sweet on you. Is it that obvious? Only to everyone with eyes, Tommy grins. But, sir, she's good for you. First time I've seen you smile since we got to this river. Assuming we survive today. We will. Those trucks are solid. The plan is sound. And we've got the best men in the Army. At 0800, final preparations begin in earnest. Soldiers line up for equipment checks. Engines roar to life for final tests. Medical teams organize their supplies. Jack finds Sarah loading her mobile hospital truck. Ready? As I'll ever be. You? Same. They work side by side for the next few hours, not talking much, but drawing comfort from each other's presence. At 1600, Jack assembles his team leaders. In 6 hours, we begin. I want every engine checked one more time. Every seal inspected. Every piece of equipment secured. We get one chance at this. What if we encounter stronger resistance than expected? Asks Lieutenant Parker. We adapt. These trucks can take some damage and keep moving. Small arms fire won't stop them, and they're too dispersed for effective artillery targeting. And if the current is stronger than anticipated? We've practiced in similar conditions. The drivers know how to compensate. As evening approaches, the tension becomes almost tangible. Soldiers write final letters, check weapons one last time, and gather in small groups for quiet conversation. Jack seeks out Sarah one final time. "How are your teams?" "Ready. We've divided the medical supplies across multiple trucks, so if we lose one, we don't lose everything." Smart thinking. They stand together, watching the sun set over the river that has become their shared destiny. "Sarah?" "Yes?" "No matter what happens tonight, these past few days with you have meant everything to me." "To me, too. If things go wrong, they won't. But if they do, I want you to know that you made me remember what we're fighting for. Not just freedom or democracy, but the chance for people to love each other without fear." Sarah's eyes fill with tears she refuses to let fall. "You're going to make me cry, and I refuse to cry before a battle. Then I'll stop talking and kiss you instead." And he does, deeply and passionately, pouring everything he feels into that kiss. When they part, both know it might be their last. "See you on the other side," Jack whispers. "Count on it. At 2,000 hours, the artillery barrage begins." The night sky erupts in flashes of light as hundreds of guns pound the far shore. The sound is deafening, a continuous thunder that shakes the ground. Jack makes final checks on his vehicles. Engines warm up. Drivers take their positions. Soldiers board in precise order. T-minus 30 minutes. Tommy calls out. Sarah appears at Jack's side. "My teams are loaded and ready." "Good. You'll be in the third wave. Safer." "I should be in the first wave with the assault troops." "Absolutely not. We need you alive to treat the wounded." She wants to argue, but knows he's right. "Jack?" "Yeah?" "For luck." She kisses him quickly, then disappears into the organized chaos of final preparations. T-minus 10 minutes. Jack climbs into the lead truck of his column. His driver, Corporal Mike Rivera, grins nervously. "Ready for a swim, Captain?" As ready as anyone can be for driving into a river at night under enemy fire. When you put it that way, it sounds kind of crazy. That's because it is crazy. T-minus 5 minutes. Jack speaks into his radio. "All units, this is Morrison. Radio check." One by one, his section leaders report in. 12 trucks in the first wave, each carrying 25 men and their equipment. T-minus 1 minute. The artillery barrage intensifies, if such a thing is possible. Across the water, the German shore appears to be on fire. T-minus 30 seconds. Jack's heart pounds. Everything they've planned, everything they've prepared for, comes down to the next few minutes. 10 seconds. The artillery barrage lifts, shifting to targets further inland. Go! 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 Corporal Rivera hits the throttle, and the amphibious truck lurches forward toward the water's edge. Behind them, 11 more vehicles follow in precise formation. The front wheels hit the water with a splash that seems impossibly loud. Then the truck is floating, its propeller catching the water and pushing them forward into the dark current. "Holy Mother of God!" Rivera breathes. "We're actually floating." Jack speaks into his radio. "Able section, sound off. Able 2, crossing successfully. Able 3, in the water and moving. Able 4, propeller engaged, making good speed." One by one, all 12 vehicles report successful water entry. The crossing takes forever, and no time at all. Jack watches the far shore grow larger, expecting at any moment to hear the whistle of incoming artillery or the chatter of machine guns, but the shore remains quiet. 2 minutes to landing. Rivera reports. Jack can make out individual trees now, the outline of the landing beach they've studied in photographs for days. Able section. Prepare for landing. The truck's front wheels touch bottom, and suddenly they're driving up the beach, water streaming from their hull. "We're across," Jack whispers, hardly believing it. "Able section, sound off," he radios. "Able 2, on the beach and moving inland." Able 3, landed safely. Able 4, across without incident. All 12 trucks report successful crossing. Phase 1 complete, Jack reports to headquarters. Able section is across and moving to objectives. Over the radio comes Colonel Bradley's voice. Outstanding work, Morrison. Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 means returning for the second wave. Jack's stomach clenches as he thinks about Sarah, scheduled to cross in 20 minutes. The return trip across the dark water seems even more surreal than the first crossing. They're actually doing it. They're driving armies across a major river like it's a highway. Back on the western shore, the second wave is already loading. Jack seeks out Sarah's truck. Everything ready? Medical supplies secured, stretchers mounted, surgical equipment waterproofed, she reports professionally. But her eyes betray her fear. You'll be fine. The Germans still don't seem to realize what's happening. Or they're waiting for us to get more vulnerable. Jack doesn't want to consider that possibility. Sarah, listen to me. No matter what happens during the crossing, stay low, stay calm, and trust your driver. These vehicles can take damage and keep moving. I will. But Jack, if something does happen, nothing will happen. But if it does, I love you. Before he can respond, she's climbing into her truck. Jack wants to stop her, to keep her safe on the western shore, but he knows she's needed on the other side. Move out, he calls. The second wave enters the water just as the first wave is returning from their initial crossing. For a moment, the river is filled with dozens of amphibious vehicles passing each other in the darkness. Jack monitors radio traffic as Sarah's wave crosses. Baker section. Sound off. Baker 2, halfway across. Baker 3, making good time. Baker 4, static. Baker 4, repeat your transmission. Nothing. Jack's blood runs cold. Baker 4, do you copy? More static, then. Baker 4 here. Sorry, radio problem. We're across safely. Jack exhales in relief. Baker 6, Sarah's voice comes through clearly. Crossed successfully. Medical teams deploying. Roger, Baker 6, Jack responds, using official radio protocol to hide his personal concern. But as the third wave prepares to launch, German artillery finally begins falling. The enemy has figured out what's happening. Incoming! Someone shouts. Artillery shells bracket the shoreline, sending up geysers of water and earth. Charlie section, hold position. Jack orders, Sir, we can make it through. Protests Lieutenant Parker. Not with artillery walking onto the crossing point. We wait for it to shift. For 10 agonizing minutes, German guns pound the shoreline. Then, as suddenly as it began, the barrage shifts to other targets. Go! 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 The third wave launches into waters still foaming from shell impacts. This crossing proves more difficult. German machine guns have opened up from the far shore, tracer rounds zipping across the water. Charlie 3, taking fire, comes over the radio. Charlie 7, we're hit. Hull breach in the rear compartment. Charlie 7, can you continue? Negative. We're taking on water. Jack's rescue boat speeds toward the disabled truck. In the darkness, he can see soldiers abandoning the sinking vehicle. All hands, this is rescue boat. We've got you. 25 soaked but alive soldiers are pulled from the water. One amphibious truck lost, but no lives. Charlie section. Sound off, Jack radios once the rescue is complete. Charlie 2. Across safely despite machine gun fire. Charlie 3. On the beach. 2 wounded, continuing mission. Charlie 4. Landed successfully. 10 of 11 vehicles made it across. Better than expected under fire. But now comes the most dangerous part. With 3 waves across and German resistance increasing, Jack must decide whether to risk the 4th wave. Morrison! Colonel Bradley's voice crackles over the radio. What's your assessment? Jack weighs the factors. German artillery is active but not yet concentrated. Machine gun fire is sporadic. Most importantly, they need the fourth wave to secure their foothold on the far shore. Fourth wave launches in 5 minutes, he decides. Roger. Good luck. The fourth wave includes Jack himself. As mission commander, he should stay on the western shore to coordinate. But his conscience won't let him send more men across a river he's not willing to cross himself. Rivera, ready for another swim? If you say so, Captain, but I'm starting to feel like a fish. As they enter the water for the second time, German resistance has clearly intensified. Artillery fire is more concentrated. Machine gun positions have been reinforced, and somewhere in the darkness, German reserves are moving to counterattack. Halfway across, their truck shudders from a near miss. That was close, Rivera mutters. Stay on course. Don't give them a stationary target. Machine gun fire stitches across the water in front of them. Rivera instinctively swerves, but Jack stops him. Straight line. Faster crossing. A shell explodes 50 yards to their left, showering them with water. Delta 5, we're hit, comes over the radio. Engine failure. Delta 5, can you make it to shore? Negative. Dead in the water. Rescue boat is moving. Jack watches in his mirrors as another amphibious truck pushes through enemy fire to reach the disabled vehicle. Delta 5, this is Delta 7. We're taking you under tow. Roger, 7. Appreciate the help. The damaged truck is pulled to shore by its sister vehicle, both making it safely despite continued enemy fire. On the eastern shore, Jack immediately seeks out Sarah's position. Her mobile hospital has been set up in a relatively protected area behind the initial assault troops. Casualty report? He asks. 17 wounded so far. Nothing we can't handle. But Jack, the Germans are bringing up reinforcements. Heavy stuff. Before he can respond, the distinctive sound of approaching aircraft fills the night sky. Take cover, someone shouts. German fighters strafe the crossing point, their machine guns ripping up the beach. Everyone dives for whatever cover they can find. Jack throws himself over Sarah, shielding her with his body as bullets whine overhead. Are you hit? He asks when the planes pass. No, but that was too close. They're getting desperate. That's actually a good sign. How is being strafed by fighters a good sign? Because it means they're running out of options. If they had ground forces available to counterattack, they'd use those instead of risking their few remaining aircraft. Sarah looks at him like he's lost his mind. Your definition of good news needs work. Despite everything, Jack laughs. Fair point. The fifth wave crosses under increasing fire but makes it successfully. By dawn, over 2,000 American soldiers are firmly established on the eastern shore of the river that was supposed to stop them for weeks. As the sun rises, the true scope of their achievement becomes clear. Looking back across the water, Jack can see amphibious trucks still shuttling back and forth like a ferry service. We did it, he says to Sarah. We actually did it. The impossible has become routine. German resistance is crumbling. Their carefully prepared defensive positions have been bypassed. Their artillery is being systematically silenced by counter-battery fire. Most importantly, their morale has shattered. Jack, look. Sarah points to a white flag waving from a German position a quarter-mile inland. First surrender of the day. There'll be more. And there are. Throughout the morning, German units begin surrendering rather than fight a hopeless battle. The river crossing that was supposed to take weeks has been accomplished in one night. Colonel Bradley arrives in the afternoon aboard an amphibious truck, grinning like a schoolboy. Morrison, outstanding work. Eisenhower himself wants to congratulate you. It wasn't just me, sir. Everyone did their job, including Lieutenant Chen. I hear her medical teams saved dozens of lives. Jack looks over at Sarah, who's bandaging a wounded German prisoner with the same care she'd shown American soldiers. She's remarkable, he says quietly. So are you, son. So are you. As evening falls on their first day across the river, Jack and Sarah finally have a moment alone. "So," she says, "we survived. Against all odds. What happens now?" "Now we win the war. But first—" Jack drops to one knee right there on the muddy riverbank, pulling a small ring from his pocket. It's not much, just a simple band he'd traded for with a local jeweler using his watch, but it represents everything he feels. "Sarah Chen, will you marry me?" Sarah stares at him, speechless for a moment. "Jack Morrison, are you proposing to me in the middle of a battlefield?" "I'm proposing to you wherever you are, because wherever you are is where I want to be." Tears stream down her face as she nods. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." He slips the ring onto her finger, and they kiss as artillery rumbles in the distance, and amphibious trucks continue their endless shuttle across the river they've conquered. Tommy Walsh appears, grinning. "Sir, sorry to interrupt, but headquarters wants to know if you two are planning to get married here or wait until we get to Berlin." Jack and Sarah look at each other and laugh. "Tell headquarters," Jack says, "that we're getting married wherever there's a chaplain and 5 minutes without someone shooting at us. That might be a while." "Sir? Then we'll wait," Sarah says, squeezing Jack's hand. "We've waited this long." As night falls again over the conquered river, Jack and Sarah sit together, watching more troops cross in the vehicles that have turned the impossible into routine. "You know what the best part is?" Sarah asks. "What?" "We didn't just cross a river tonight. We proved that nothing is impossible if you have the right people and the right equipment." "And the right motivation," Jack adds, looking at his new fiancée. "What's our motivation?" "Love. Love of country, love of freedom, and," he pauses to kiss her, "love of each other." In the distance, more amphibious trucks continue their work, carrying the tools of liberation across a river that will never again serve as a barrier to freedom. 3 months later, the war in Europe ended. Jack and Sarah were married in a small ceremony in Ohio, with Tommy Walsh as best man and half their old unit in attendance. They returned to building bridges and healing people, but they never forgot the night they helped turn a river into a highway to victory. And sometimes, on quiet evenings by the water, they remember when love helped them cross the impossible river under the stars of a world at war. If you enjoyed this story of courage, love, and determination against impossible odds, make sure to subscribe for more incredible tales from history's most dramatic moments. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of history lovers who believe that the past has the power to inspire our future. What story would you like to hear next? Let us know in the comments below.